Afghanistan actually does not only have a special place in my heart, it also has a formative sort of function in my sort of intellectual development.
The thing I wanted to ask is that, was it normal in history of Islam that people would have very harsh arguments about Aqeedah, about Madhhab, about these things?
The Sahaba were able to handle the issues of Aqeedah. Most of the conflicts that took place between the Sahaba were very political in nature.
What comes to your mind when you first hear the name Afghanistan?
Do we have great examples of tolerance? Do we have great examples of peaceful coexistence?
One of the faces which is named in every discussion is Ibn Taymiyya, and the major misunderstanding about Ibn Taymiyya in Afghanistan is the belief that he was a takfiri.
We have different understandings of the reality that we live in and the priorities that we should have as Muslim communities.
Another common misconception is that Ibn Taymiyya was anti-Tasawwuf.
Who becomes kafir and who doesn't become kafir? He said that what we choose is that we do not declare as kafir anyone from the people of the Qibla, people who pray towards the Qibla. He said that a consensus cannot be made without the Shia because they are believers. And we should be able as Sunnis to appreciate the difference between Abu Bakr and Umar. There is a Bakri personality and there is a Umari personality.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear Sheikh. Before we start the program and start the questions, can you please introduce yourself to the people of Afghanistan and a bit of an introduction about your books, your education, a short introduction, and then we will go to the questions.
Alhamdulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Well, there is not much to say about myself, I guess. I am Egyptian who lives in the United States. I moved to the United States in my early 20s, but I grew up in Egypt, Alexandria, Egypt in particular. I have basically pursued Islamic knowledge since childhood in the nearby masajid and institutes in Alexandria, Egypt, and continued basically to seek Islamic knowledge as I also studied medicine. Eventually I graduated from an institute in Egypt, and then moved on to taking a master's degree and then a PhD eventually from Tripoli, Lebanon, a university there in Tripoli in Lebanon, in comparative fiqh. And that certainly is, in addition to my pursuing traditional ijazat from my mashayikh, particularly, in the Hanbali Madhhab, which is my Madhhab, and in various other sciences, language, logic, fiqh, hadith, etc. And I have been practicing, medicine and dawah here in the United States since the 1990s, early 1990s. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very much, dear Sheikh. I will start my question by a simple question. What comes to your mind when you first hear the name Afghanistan?
Oh, well, Afghanistan has a special place in my heart, of course. It has a special place in the hearts of many people from my generation. And this, I have to be very careful here because, we grew up at the time of the Afghani Jihad against the USSR. We were teenagers. We were children and teenagers around that time. And we had just great hopes like really, really great hopes. And then whatever transpired afterwards, what happened in Afghanistan afterwards, sparked sort of a reevaluation, reassessment of our thinking, of our ideologies, our expectations, and it made us, go a little bit deeper and have sort of more of a more practical approach to things, and understand the complexities and intricacies of life and the intricacies of da'wah and revival in general. That it was not as simple and straightforward as we earlier thought. So Afghanistan actually does not only have a special place in my heart, it also has a formative sort of function in my sort of intellectual development.
Thank you very much. So I hope we will have you one day in Afghan for yourself. It's surely a distinct country, a distinct society. But one thing that's common, at least in Afghanistan of social media, it's the nature of radical arguments on creed, aqeedah, and Madhhab. And it's unfortunately very common in the whole of Islamic world, and even in maybe in your societies where Muslim live, they have very harsh arguments with each other, and the harsher arguments make enmity between Muslims around the globe, and engage in discussions that's beyond their capacity. The thing I wanted to ask is that, was it normal in history of Islam that people would have very harsh arguments about Aqeedah, about Madhhab, about these things? And did previous people, normal people like me who have no knowledge of these things, indulge in these arguments which they do not have the scholarly capacity of engaging in?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Well, yes, we have to be honest with ourselves, and we should have reverence and respect for and love for our tradition and our history, without being self-deluded or without lying to ourselves. Yeah. So yes, historically we did have basically a division on issues of Aqeedah and other issues. The Sahaba were able to handle the issues of Aqeedah. Most of the conflicts that took place between the Sahaba were very political in nature, and they were able to handle the issues of Aqeedah much better than us. And they had disagreements on some matters in Aqeedah as well. Did the Prophet see his Lord on the Isra and Mi'raj, and other issues as well? Abdullah ibn Mas'ud had at some point denied that Mu'awwidhatain are part of the Quran. So the Sahaba did have some disagreements on issues of Aqeedah, but they were able to handle themselves or handle the disagreement, manage the disagreement much better than us. But thereafter, disagreements over the Aqeedah started to become more prevalent. From the time of the Tabi'in, things started to become a little bit more prevalent and more acute and intense. And some of these disagreements caused a great deal of suffering. We know the division between the Khawarij and the Shia and the Sunnah. This was like a division that was, even though it started out as a political division, it ended up being a division on theology. It ended up being ideological and theological division. And many wars took place and a lot of blood was shed. We know that, at some point Ibn Taymiyya, for instance, conquered North Africa and massacred, tens of thousands of Muslims for having a false creed or for sort of what he thought that they were anthropomorphists, for instance. And he is the founder of Dawlat al-Muwahhideen. So, yes, there are sort of, this history does exist, but that does not mean that this was our history. It means that this part existed in our history. But do we have great examples of tolerance? Do we have great examples of peaceful coexistence? Of course. And in fact, Muslims did not have inquisitions in the worst sense of the word. Like in Europe, for instance, they had inquisitions. We had many groups that were described as heretical by the mainstream society, and they were left to basically live their lives and to practice their religion as they believe. So our Islamic history is also full of examples of tolerance and coexistence and peaceful coexistence. The idea here is our readings differ, and our understandings differ, and our realization also of the changes in reality. We have different understandings of the reality that we live in and the priorities that we should have as Muslim communities. And some people will bring up these, conflicts. And I'm not saying that we will bury them. I'm just saying that we should know how to manage them better and elevate the discourse. And my idea is, simple and straightforward. Among Ahl Sunnah, if we agree on the sources, and we should be agreeing on the sources. So Ahl Sunnah are called Ahl Sunnah al Jama'ah because they agree on the Jama'ah that transmitted the Quran and Sunnah to us, and they agree on the sources, the Quran and the Sunnah. So among Ahl Sunnah, there should be a vibrant discourse, but as far as it respects two elements, one of them is basically to have measured exposure, meaning you do not subject the lay people or the public to intricate discussions they are not ready to receive. And so you have your discussions within your limited groups. And then the second one is to disagree on love, to love one another, because we say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and we belong to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we follow the same book and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So to disagree, agree to disagree on love and carry on and move on and work on uplifting our societies and prioritizing, the practice of faith in our societies.
Thank you very much. Thank you. One of the faces which is named in every discussion is Ibn Taymiyya, and the major misunderstanding about Ibn Taymiyya in Afghanistan is the belief that he was a takfiri. His admirers paints this image of him and declares other groups to be misguided and disbeliever, especially Shias and Sufis, while his critics points to the same claim to accuse him of being a takfiri. To what extent this image of Ibn Taymiyya is accurate?
Ibn Taymiyya is one of the Hanbali imams. He is, an imam mujtahid. According to even his adversaries, they consider them to be a mujtahid. So he's a mujtahid imam from the Hanbali Madhhab, who was born in 661 in Harran, and left for Damascus when he was a child, when the Mongols conquered his city, left with his father, who was a Hanbali scholar. His grandfather was one of the great Hanbali imams as well. And so he left with his family to Damascus and, continued. So he was Damascene to a great extent, from Damascus to a great extent, because that's where he grew up, and he lived the rest of his life there, except for short trips here and there, including Egypt. And he died in 728 at the age of 67. And the accusation of takfir makes me shocked, actually, because it is an oppressive accusation. It's not just a lie, but it is an enormous lie that it amounts to being an oppressive accusation. And I truly, because I sympathize with Muslims and I feel for my Muslim brothers, I hope that they don't basically subject themselves to the wrath of God by making oppressive accusations. Takfir in our history, in our tradition, there was plenty of takfir in our tradition. And we have to be honest about this. People actually do bring this up and to talk about this. There was takfir, even between, mainstream groups. There was basically fatwa of not praying behind people from a certain madhhab or this or that, of not marrying from a certain madhhab or this or that. There was takfir of the people who do not have, basically, who make taqleed in matters of aqeedah. And they do not basically know the rational arguments in matters of aqeedah and arrive at their creed through sort of reasoning. There was takfir of all the Mubtadi'ah. And Imam Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyya was actually one of the farthest people from unwarranted takfir, one of the sort of the farthest people from unwarranted takfir. He said, وَالَّذِي نَخْتَارُهُ أَلَّا نُكَفِّرَ أَحَدًا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْقِبْلَةِ. What we choose, after he basically presented arguments of different people on who becomes kafir and who doesn't become kafir, he said that what we choose is that we do not declare as kafir anyone from the people of the Qibla, people who pray towards the Qibla. And Imam Taymiyyah said that some people from the Mu'tazila and Rafidah had immigrated to lands and made da'wah, and people accepted Islam because of them. And it is better to be a Muslim and a mubtadi' than to be a non-Muslim. Imam Taymiyyah said about the Shia that they are, and it's basically unlike the majority of Muslim scholars. He said that a consensus cannot be made without the Shia because they are believers. And if we say that the basic consensus, the basis of consensus is the saying of Allah, وَمَنْ يَشَاقِقِ رَسُولًا بَعْدَ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, follow a path other than the path of the believers. And he says, since they are of the mu'mineen, then consensus cannot be had without their agreement. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah said, despite everything the Sunnis say about Khawarij and Rafidah, rejectionist Shia, despite everything as the Sunnis say about Khawarij and Rafidah, the Sunnis would not wish for their enemies that are not Muslim to defeat them or to win over them. Win over the Khawarij and the Rafidah, which are two of the sects that we have statements of takfir about them from many among the righteous predecessors. But he said that they are not. He said whoever has iman in his heart and is not a munafiq internally and declares the shahada is a believer, no matter how bad and extreme and deviant his bid'ah is. He said that there is basically, no matter how much people disagreed over issues like the attributes of God and qadr, predestination, the sifat of Allah and predestination, they should not, no takfir should be made of them. He said that among the mubtadi'ah, the innovators are people who reach walaya, people who reach the state of walaya or friendship with God. I can actually carry on for a couple of hours just quoting things of this nature. So the best way that the people who truly wanted to present a true picture, like a faithful, truthful picture about Imam Taymiyya, the best thing they can do is to collect 50 or more of these statements and translate them to whichever language. If there are misconceptions that the people have who speak a particular language, translate like 50 of these statements. There is like an abundance of such statements. I'm telling you, like if you want me to carry on, I can carry on.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Another common misconception is that Ibn Taymiyya was anti-Tasawwuf, or that he even declared Sufis disbeliever. This claim can be found even among the writings of major scholars, especially within the Salafi school. However, on another hand, he held many great Sufi figures in his esteem, such as Junaid Baghdadi, Fudail ibn Ayyad, and others. He even wrote works related to Sufism, such as commentary on Futuhul Ghaib, and his student Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah and Imaduddin Wasiti also wrote extensively in this field. The famous American Orientalist George Makdisi even wrote that Ibn Taymiyyah belongs to the Qadiriyya order, citing passages, some Hanbali writings, when Ibn Taymiyyah himself mentioned that he received the cloak, or kharqa, we say in Afghanistan also we call it kharqa, of Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jailani. So which image of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is more accurate?
Okay, alhamdulillah. So, so Ibn Taymiyyah was a faqih. And that is something that we have to remember. So even when we talk about takfir, when we talk about being the farthest from unwarranted takfir, keep in mind, I'm saying unwarranted takfir because the idea here is al-haq is wasat bayna tarafayn. Al-haq is in the middle between two extremes. And so the fuqaha will make takfir of certain people. The fuqaha will make takfir of certain people who say certain things or do certain things that are basically that warrant that takfir. So we're not talking here, we're not saying that Ibn Taymiyyah was the farthest away from takfir, is that like he never made takfir of anyone whatsoever. But whenever he made takfir of someone, he was never the only one to make takfir of them. Never the only one to make takfir of them among the fuqaha. And he had a qualification. Usually he would have a qualification that will prevent, this takfir from applying to individuals. So that it would be addressing positions, statements, not applying to individuals. When it comes to Sufism, now what I will try to do now is that I will try to prove that among the fuqaha, Ibn Taymiyyah was among the fuqaha who are closest to Sufis, not the most antithetical, not the most antipathic to Tasawwuf. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, so what is Tasawwuf? Tasawwuf, the real Tasawwuf, not the fake Tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is ibadah, akhlaq, zuhd, tawadu, etc. So ibadah and akhlaq and zuhd, it's worship, it is good conduct, and it is, zuhd, which is living a modest life, a life of renunciation of the luxuries and the glitters of the dunya. Al-Bazzar Al-Allama al-Bazzar, one of the people who wrote biographies of Ibn Taymiyya, spoke about the ibadah Ibn Taymiyya, that it was, his ibadah was matchless. Like when he would basically open the salah with the takbir, he said the hearts would tremble of awe. And then when he recite, the limbs would quiver. And then after he finishes Salat al-Subh, he gazes at the sky and he, makes a dhikr until the sun rises well into the sky. And his tawadu, he said, was matchless. Even though he can sometimes be, like sharp in discussions and debates, yes. And fuqaha, many fuqaha are like this. He had a Umari personality. And we should be able as Sunnis to appreciate the difference between Abu Bakr and Umar. There is a Bakri personality and there is a Umari personality. And the Umari personality is a little bit more forceful. Ibn Taymiyyah had a Umari personality, not a Bakri personality. And despite that, he was very humble with poor people. And Al-Bazzar said he would serve them with his hand, and so on. As far as his zuhd, he lived a celibate life. He did not get married. He lived his life between learning, teaching, jihad on the battlefield against the conquerors, and basically da'wah. That was basically his life, and completely detached from the luxuries of this dunya. That is basically what his friends and foes have acknowledged. That is Tasawwuf. Now, what he said about Tasawwuf is not any different. He said that there are three different types of Sufis. There is Sufiyat al-Haqa'iq, Sufiyat al-Rusum, and Sufiyat al-Arzaq. The Sufism of realities, Haqa'iq, and he praised them. Among them would be, Ma'ruf al-Karhi, Sari al-Saqati, al-Junaid, Sheikh Abdul Qadir, al-Harawi. So he praised these figures a lot. And then he said there is Sufiyat al-Rusum, Sufism of formalities. The people who wear something like something special, on top of their head, or they wear like something special like what I'm wearing now, or like it's about formalities. It was not the realities, not the inward realities. And then he said there is Sufiyat al-Arzaq, the people who are trying to basically live off of Tasawwuf. He did not even condemn the people who are living off of Tasawwuf, because they were living in Takaya. They were living in like
Khanaqath.
Yes, yeah. And so they would live in the Khanaqah, and they would basically get people to get them food and stuff like this. He did not feel that this is the proper way of Tasawwuf, but he did not condemn them, and he did not even say that they should not be given charity. He said that they may be given money and supported as long as their conduct is consistent with the Sharia. Their conduct is consistent with the Sharia. Now, when it comes to the statement, the shatahat, the esoteric statements of Mutasawwifa that caused many fuqaha to declare takfir on them. Ibn Taymiyya actually said that if they say these things in a state of intoxication, that they would be forgiven if they were overwhelmed by the state of sukr, which is spiritual intoxication, not intoxication like drinking wine, like the spiritual intoxication or sukr, then they would be forgiven. And he said about when, it was reported from Abu Yazid al-Bistami that he said, Subhani, Subhani, glory be to me, glory be to me. And so Ibn Taymiyyah said if he said it in a state of intoxication, then he is forgiven. And he praised Abu Yazid al-Bistami. Why? because Abu Yazid al-Bistami would recant this, would take it back after he wakes up from that state of spiritual intoxication. So he made a distinction between someone who is hululi and ittihadi, like they theorize about it. They theorize about it in their state of wakefulness, and someone who may say something of this nature in a state of spiritual intoxication. When it comes to, epistemically speaking, Ibn Taymiyya put a lot of stock in the concept of fitra, which is a pretty Sufi concept, and the concept of ilham. And the concept of ilham, for instance, he has a very moderate position on the concept of ilham, which is inspiration. He said that this inspiration is not substitute for the revelation, because no one receives the revelation after the Prophet ﷺ. So anyone who's inspired, like Umar was muhaddas, for instance, inspired. Anyone who is inspired does not have a license to oppose the Quran and the Sunnah. And anything they say that is not consistent with the Quran and Sunnah will be rejected. But he even allowed people to choose between the positions of the scholars based on that ilham. Mm-hmm. He said that if someone is, gets two fatwas from two different scholars, he allows them basically to use their ilham to follow their heart. And the Prophet was the first one to say this, istafti qalbak, consult your heart. But he was committed to this, and he put it as part of his epistemic theory, as complementary, supplementary, not a substitute for the wahy or the revelation. And that's a pretty Sufi concept. He himself, when he would be asked about Sufis in particular, I told you the divisions that he gave, and he said they're like the rest of the people. They're like all the people. Some of them are, muqtasid. Some of them are zalim li nafsihi. Some of them are sabiq bil khayrat. Some of them are among the vanguard of the righteous. Some of them have mixed baggage, and some of them have transgressed themselves, just not like the rest of the people. The fuqaha, you could say the same thing about the fuqaha. You could say the same thing about the muhaddithin. You could say the same thing about the rulers, about the mujahideen, about all different kinds of people or categories of people. So I believe that anyone who has like a cursory reading of the legacy and the literature that Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah had left behind will not basically come out with the notion that he was anti-Sufi or that he was the enemy of Sufis or anything of that nature.
Jazakallah khair.
He was, by the way, he was buried in the Sufi cemetery.
Okay. Yes. In Abdal Cemetery in Damascus.
But certainly, he was very vocal against deviations within Tasawwuf. Like he was vocal against deviations within every group. So that does not make you, when you're passionate, when you love your people, when you want to, when you basically, like if I'm Egyptian, when I criticize the Egyptians, it is because of my love for my people. If you're from Afghanistan and you criticize the Afghanis, it is because of your love for your people.
Exactly.
We're both Muslim. When we criticize the Muslims, it is because of our love for our people, the Muslim people. So there is a difference between someone who is critical because of his love and his concern, and someone who's critical because of his animosity and his hate.
Mm-hmm. Another criticism directed at Ibn Taymiyya, even by those who respect him, is that he anthropomorphized God. Was Ibn Taymiyya an anthropomorphist, or Mujassim? Do you believe that he believed in Tajsim of God? And also some people claim that he was anti-rational, that he didn't like rationalism, and some say that he and Ibn Hazm are the two great anti-rational scholars of Islam. Are these claims accurate, correct, or they are misrepresentation of Ibn Taymiyya rahimahullah?
Okay, so no, they are absolutely false, completely false. Let's begin with the anthropomorphism one. Anthropomorphism or tajsim. Imam Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyya said that most of the Sunnis, including most of our ashab, which means our Hanbali, the fellows, our ashab in the madhhab, declare the mujassim and mushabbih as kafirs. Declare the one who makes tajsim or tashbih as kafir. He is the one who said that. He is the one who said that the creatures, the samadiyya of Allah, no one of the creatures can be described as samad, as Allah is described as samad, because they are subject to this union and divisibility. He said that if you claim that the yad of Allah is a jariha, that the yad or the hand of Allah is a jariha, meaning a limb or a part of God, then that is wrong. But if you deny that the yad is an attribute of God that is different from the 7 other attributes, speaking, knowledge, power, etc., then you're wrong, because the yad is an attribute of God that is different from the other attributes. But we're not saying that it is a divisible part of God. We're not saying it is one of the limbs of God. We're not saying that God has limbs, jawarih. And the idea here, let me tell you this, because this will, I will tell you 2 things. The first thing is that the philosophers, why is it that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah refused to say that God is not a jism? He never said God is a jism. But why is it he refused to say God is not a jism? He refused to say this because the philosophers will say that all things in existence are either ajsam or awarid, jawhar or arad. And the issue here is sometimes people, jawhar is different from jism, but sometimes people mix things up. And they say that if you have extramental reality, you're either self-subsisting or not. And a'rad are not self-subsisting. A'rad are called accidents. A'rad are not self-subsisting. You cannot say that there is yellow that exists there without a jism, that is yellow, because yellow does not have an existence, extramental existence that is completely independent of ajsam and self-subsisting. So, is Allah existent and self-subsisting or not? Of course, we have to say that Allah is existing and self-subsisting. That is why he did not want it to be cornered by the philosophers. That is why he did not want to be cornered by the philosophers. So he would say, I will not say anything that is not basically related to us from the Quran and Sunnah. So I will not say God is a jism. I will not say God is not a jism, because the Quran and Sunnah did not say this or that. But if you say that God is a jism, meaning that God is like, a thick substance, a flesh, or like a thick substance, then that, or composed of parts, etc., I will reject that. I will reject anything that will be understood to attribute any deficiency of God, but I will only describe him both positively and negatively with the Quranic descriptions and the hadith descriptions, because no one knows more about God and his messenger. Now tie this to the anti-rational part. He was absolutely not anti-rational. It is only reasonable that you understand the limitations of your reason. It is part of reason to understand the limitations of your reason.
Exactly.
And his theory of epistemology is the thing that is most attractive about him. Is his theory of epistemology. When it comes to this dunya, he is the one who debunked Aristotelian logic. He is the one, his criticisms of logic, according to the testimony of the masters of logic in contemporary times, the people who are most knowledgeable of logic and the modern critiques of logic, his criticisms of Greek logic were on point. That is why you find someone like Imam Suyuti abridging his book on logic. Of course, Imam Suyuti does not belong to the Hanbalis or like Atharism or Hanbalism, but he is the one who abridged his critique on logic. But modern logicians appreciate the pioneering criticisms of an Imam Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyya. So he was basically saying that inductive reasoning is the way to produce knowledge, because it moves us from particulars to universals, versus the Aristotelian basically syllogisms that move us only from kulliyat to juz'iyat, from universals to particulars. And that was what crippled civilization. This way of thinking is what crippled civilization. When people adopted inductive reasoning, we had basically all the scientific progress that we were able to have after we adopted inductive reasoning. But that is that's in terms of his critiques of Greek logic. But when it comes to the religion, he was saying, that we have two areas. We have al-amr and we have al-khabar. We have al-amr, the command, and the khabar, the report. The akhbar of Allah. What Allah tells us about the unseen, we should accept them and not judge them according to our reason. We will judge them according to, what he calls pure reason. Not judge them, but understand them according to pure reason. The reason that people don't disagree over. But we will not judge them according to sort of this school of philosophy or that school of philosophy, because that type of reasoning is controversial to begin with. People don't agree on many of these things. But if it comes to bada'ih al-aql, when it comes to the mental axioms, he never said we will not apply the mental axioms. So he never said that. He said the universal law of Imam al-Razi. Imam al-Razi said that when the reason and the reports, the adilla sam'iyya, the transmitted reports conflict, we will have to give precedence to what? The reason over the adilla sam'iyya, because we came to know God through reason. So Imam Ibn Taymiyya, and I say Imam al-Razi and Imam Taymiyya, not because, I follow both in this matter. I follow Imam Taymiyya, of course, in these matters. But Imam al-Razi is an imam because he deserves that ranking, not because he's my imam on this particular issue. And that's something that people need to grow up and understand, that they are not the center of the world. So, when we say that these titles do not necessarily have to do with my relationship with the person, they have to do with the person's status. Anyway, so Imam Ibn Taymiyya, rahimahullah, took that universal law and said the things are not this simple, because the output of reason is not undifferentiated category of definitive output, definitive purports, or definitive implications. Reason can give you two different types of output, definitive and speculative. And the revelation also, transmitted reports, they can give you definitive and speculative. The definitive, whether it comes from reason or it comes from the revelation, will be favored over the speculative, whether it comes from reason or it comes from the revelation. That is not anti-rational at all. That is extremely irrational. Mm-hmm. That's extremely rational. But he argued that there would never be a conflict between the definitive of reason and the definitive of the revelation. Never be a conflict between that which is definitive in reason and that which is definitive in revelation. When it comes to fiqh, when it comes to al-awamir, when it comes to al-ahkam, he is the one that may be described as one of the most rational people, because he is the one who argued that the ahkam of Allah are based on comprehensible manatat, comprehensible, objectives and operative causes and principles. Objectives and operative causes and principles. Manatat would be operative causes, but he's the one who, so among the Hanbalis, he's the one who used to choose positions from different madhhab. He often chose positions of Imam Abu Hanifa, for instance, following, his basically his own principle which allowed him to make more qiyas than many other Hanbalis, for instance. So he used reason where it should be used, and where reason should be humbled when it comes to the unseen, the ghaib of Allah, and reason should be humbled. He said, accept whatever comes to you from the Quran and Sunnah and humble yourself.
Jazakallah khair. Dear Sheikh, most of our people are Hanafis, and a lot of Afghan people are Sufis. So what you have been saying throughout our interview, it will be very beneficial. If you can summarize what Ibn Taymiyya has to offer to our people and generally to all Muslims in this age.
Okay, the first thing is that Ibn Taymiyya should be a symbol of reconciliation and unity, not the other way around. People should know how to read Ibn Taymiyya because he is a symbol of unity and reconciliation. Ibn Taymiyya is the one who used to say that you can leave what is favorable for unity and reconciliation. Ibn Taymiyya is the one who said if a Hanbali imam leads a Hanafi congregation and they want him to pray witr the Hanafi way, he should pray it the Hanafi way, even though it is makruh in our madhhab and makruh in the Shafi'i madhhab and makruh in the Maliki madhhab to do witr with, three with tashahud in the middle because it looks like Maghrib. He said that he should do it the way they ask him to do it. He said because reconciliation of hearts and unity of Muslims takes a precedence. He said whenever someone goes travels through the Muslim lands, he should pray with their jama'ah and should not cause fitan and disagreements among the believers, but should take them as his awliya, regardless of their background. So he is a symbol of unity and reconciliation. That is on one side. On the other side, his work, and particularly when it comes to, resolving that conflict between reason and revelation, resolving the conflict or refuting the existence of conflict between reason and revelation is extremely important, because nowadays the conflict, in place of reason, people claim there is a conflict between science and revelation. So we should use the same, basically, model that he left. Try to figure out first what is definitive, and don't claim something to be a definitive fact of science when it is not. Science also is not all definitive. And we know how things change all the time. You know, even like in my profession in medicine, we know how things change, and whatever used to be like basically a fact 20 years ago is no more a fact. So that basically attitude and that thought process towards science, towards reason, is a balanced one. We're not rejecting reason, we're not rejecting science, but we want to say that the definitive of the Sharia will never be in conflict with reason or science. So all you need to do is to put a little bit more effort into verifying what is definitive and what's speculative, both in the revelation and in reason or science.
Dear Sheikh, as a last question, as you know, Afghanistan has been going through wars in last 40 years, almost more than 40 years. And this has created lots of enmity, because in the wartime, people do lots of bad things, and in the name of ethnicity, in the name of language, in the name of Madhhab. And this has created a lot of bad memories. People hate each other, and they post some hateful things on social media about other people, about other ethnicities. As you know, Afghanistan has many ethnicities. We are very diverse, and throughout history, we have been in a unity. Like in every country in the world, you can see some kind of Sunni Shia war, but in Afghanistan, we have less instances of these. But right now, the situation, especially in the social media discourses, that we have lots of enmity, lots of envious statements. We spoke a lot about Ibn Taymiyya. We want to hear your recommendation, what you want to say to especially to the youth of our people, how to make unity, how to love each other, and what Islam has said about unity, about love between Muslims and Muslim communities.
Okay, so I'll stay committed to my Hanbalism, and I will actually quote Ibn Taymiyya again, and I will quote someone from Afghanistan, Imam al-Harawi, who is a Hanbali Imam from Afghanistan. Khawaja Ansari, you know Khawaja Ansari?
Yes.
Imam al-Harawi from Herat.
Yeah, we call him Pir Herat.
Okay, so he's Imam Abu Ismail al-Harawi. He was a Hanbali, but you must know that as well.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah. So Imam Taymiyya said that, the deen is about al-ikhlas lil-haqq wal-rahma bil-khalq. The deen is about devotion to God and mercy for people, mercy for the creation. And if that is not what we're practicing, then we're not living our deen the way we should live it. It is just two parts: devotion to God and mercy among ourselves. Mercy, extending mercy to the creation. And Imam al-Harawi said, when he talked about rectifying al-bidayat, rectifying the beginnings, he said that the nihayat, the endings, will not be rectified unless we rectify the beginnings. And rectifying the beginnings, he said, depends on several matters, but he said among them is shafaqa, to have sympathy, to have empathy for the world, for the word, al-alam, for the whole world. بذل النصيحة كف المؤونة وبذل النصيحة, to basically to have goodwill for the people, and to not be burdensome, to not be a burden on the world, but to try to help and assist the people and have goodwill for the people without being a burden on them, and to have empathy for them. That is basically the deen. And Imam Ibn Qayyim also quotes many of the Sufi masters saying that Tasawwuf is all about akhlaq, and whoever has better akhlaq has better Tasawwuf. It's all about good manners, and whoever exceeds you in good manners or beats you to good manners, he has beaten you to Tasawwuf. So let us just try to have a simple but deep understanding of our deen and move beyond deen by association, identitarian religiosity, move beyond the deen by simply persuasion or ideological religiosity to realizing the beauty of our faith. And you will not realize the beauty of our faith and taste the sweetness of it unless your heart is full of empathy for people and you have the best conduct with people and manners. That is how we rise. That's how our nations rise. We have to reclaim, proper understanding of our deen. And it's our only way to renaissance, to revival, renaissance, and to rise once again. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless Afghanistan. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring peace and prosperity to that beautiful part of the Muslim world.
Jazakallah khair. It was a very wonderful podcast, and I'm sure people will benefit a lot here in Afghanistan, and I'm sure it will be enlightening for the people of Afghanistan. I hope we will have you again and again, and your thoughts will bring light to our people. Thank you very much, dear Sheikh. We'll have you again, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.